Okay, Jana, that's fine. You can be off camera. So let me share my screen. Before I share my screen, there are two small pieces of apology. One is there was a meeting I was supposed to attend at as a lunch meeting at 1 o'clock. It got postponed to 5 p.m. There is no way I can skip that. And therefore, I'm taking it from a location which is outside somewhere. And the second thing is I will exit after the didactic. And yeah, Lali Auntie and Usha Auntie will take it forward from there. But I will still be there for the didactic. That's where we will start. Sorry about that. Normally I wouldn't have done this at all, but this was just in terms of action acceptance choices, this fell in the thing I have to accept. I can't do much about it. So yeah, apologies. All right. So the part we want to talk about was habits. Now, if you look at some of the core topics we have discussed, whether it is perception, cognitive bias, mindset, automatic negative thoughts, all of those things are sort of standalone pieces which make sense on their own. But habit is something which runs horizontal and weaves into each of these things. There might be a cognitive habit we are getting into. There could be automatic negative thought habit we are getting into. There could be a perception habit we are getting into. So any of these things can become a habit. So a habit is more like an attribute of some of those things rather than a standalone topic. Now, this is a slide we are going to keep as a standard slide for the whole of Excel for us to deeply assimilate and understand this, which is we are what we repeatedly do. And excellence is not a single act, but it is a habit. Okay, it is something, excellence is about something we are able to repeatedly do, and excel is what excellence is all about. Now, just taking a step back, as far as the program itself is concerned, what we have done with this program, Teachers as Neurosculptors, is we have divided it into three parts. The first part is really the enrich, which we have all gone through. Enrich is more about the knowing part of it. What is it? When we talk about neuroplasticity, what is neuroplasticity? When we talk about neurosculpting, what is neurosculpting? What is automatic negative thoughts? What is a mindset? What is a bias? What is perception? And so on. So a lot of knowledge is what was there as a part of Enrich and the primary part of Enrich. Whereas when we come to Excel, Excel is really about the doing part of it, which is where the previous act comes in. It's about what we do repetitively is what excellence is all about. Excellence is more about the doing part of it. And then we will go into embody. Embody is about being. Being and doing are very different things. Doing is an effortful activity. Being is a second nature. Therefore, it is usually quite effortless. How do we become more effortless when it comes to forming the right kind of perceptions? How do we become effortless when we have to catch hold of ourselves when we are into negativity? How to catch hold of ourselves when we are in a fixed mindset, and so on, is what embody is all about. If I may, one parallel one can draw is when they say, how do we read our scriptures? They say the three parts are Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, which is basically the first part is about the knowing or hearing. The second part is about assimilating and understanding. And the third part is allowing it to go through you and you sort of become that. So which is this knowing, doing, and being in some sense, roughly translated. Now, these are the parts we have done. The mindset and cognitive bias we have done. Today, we will do habits. And the next session, we will integrate with what are the tools which we have spoken about, what are the other tools we can talk about, with a much greater focus on mindfulness And the sixth one, which will still be on neuroscience stroke psychology, Anita Rao will take it, which is on life positions and strokes. And then we will move on to excellence and build it as something for our own schools. How do we pursue excellence? What do we mean by strategy, structure, systems, process, shared values, culture, leadership, and so on? What does the dictionary definition of a habit say? First and foremost, habit is a value neutral word, which means per se, we can't say a habit is good or bad. There are certain habits which could be good. There are certain habits which are not desirable habits. Okay, and both of those work exactly the same way. That's something to be understood. A habit we want to form and a habit we want to get rid of, a habit we have formed, all of that follow the same process. It is just a regular tendency or a practice, something which is very difficult to give up. Now let's look at what are the characteristics of habit. The first and the foremost and the most important characteristic of a habit is it is exceptionally powerful. Once we are into a habit, it is very difficult to come out of the habit, and we will stay in the habit. So there are people I know who will feel down if they don't go for a morning run, or, and similarly, we also know of people who will feel down if they don't get the next dose of some substance which they are used to. The second aspect about habit is it's very, very difficult to acquire it, because more than difficult, it is very slow to acquire. It creeps up slowly, steadily, bit by bit by bit by bit is the way habit gets gained. Okay? So we don't form a habit just like that overnight. It is very slow to acquire, but once it has reached its capacity or its tipping point, so to speak, it's very tough to break, and it's exceptionally powerful. The third characteristic of a habit is it is usually effortless. Okay. Once we are in a certain rhythm, I remember Shubha was talking about a certain rhythm the last session or the session before that. Once we are in a certain routine, once we are in a certain rhythm, there is no effort which is required for us to pursue our habit, whatever the habit might be. The reason for that is habit is not so much a higher center activity. Habit is a lot more a lower center activity. It is strong and hardwired in our lower center. So when we are walking, which is controlled by our lower center to a large extent, which is, we don't say, now I put my left leg forward and then the right leg and then the left leg and the right leg and so on. We don't even think about it, but we have walked a certain distance. We don't think when we are breathing. So we don't really think. There is no process of cognition. There is no thinking which is involved. Similarly, habits, there is very little of cognition which happens. It happens instantaneously, automatically, habitually. That's why it's a habit. Now, habits can be broadly divided into two parts. One is certain physical habits we get into. The physical habits could be in terms of our eating, in terms of our exercise, in terms of our external self, all of those things could be the physical habits. And then we have mental habits. Right? Mental habits, we will talk a lot more about it as we go forward. One thing we have to understand when we talk about a habit is that, especially in physical habits, you need a larger dose of it to get the same level of gratification. I remember Javed Akhtar's beautiful share. I can't say it because I'm not good enough in Hindi, but I read it. It was very beautiful, which says, at all points in time, what we miss is that one more. If you have a 3-bedroom house, we just think 4-bedroom and it will be perfect. If you have a 4-bedroom house, we'll say if it's 5 bedrooms and it'll be perfect. If I'm 5'8", if I have 1 more inch, I'll be perfect in terms of height. So everything is not about a giant leap. It's about that one incremental. Habit works exactly like that. Every time there is a little bit of an extra dose, there's a little bit of an incremental dose, which is required, particularly in physical habits, to get the same level of gratification. Because the moment we have started getting into the rhythm of having an ice cream every second day, then for us to get the same satisfaction, then we have to be having a little more satisfaction, which is why it that grows, which is that part about slow to acquire and tough. Let's take a look at what is this habit cycle. Okay. Before we get into what is happening in our brain, we have to understand what is the habit cycle. The first part about a habit cycle is we actively, cognitively, higher center wise, we repeatedly, consciously think about something. So the primary habit we are going to talk about is all our mental habits, not so much the physical habits here. Okay. When we come to embody, we'll talk about some of our physical habits as well. So first it starts with repeated conscious thoughts. Could be a good thought, could be a negative thought, it could be a judgment, it could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be any of those things, but it is repeated conscious thoughts where it comes to us, we think about that particular incident and we repeatedly think about it. It's not it is happening repeatedly, it is happening repeatedly in our mind, the repeat conscious thoughts. As we are getting the more and more, it slowly becomes a non-conscious or an automatic way we are able to think. So repeatedly, if we are able to read a news which is talking about a certain ethnicity or a certain group as not being good, repeatedly we are getting those conscious thoughts, and at some point in time, it gets into some kind of a stereotype or some sort of a judgment we form about a certain group because it becomes non-conscious and automatic. Now, the non-conscious automatic at this stage is still at a thought level. And as it progresses, it becomes a non-conscious way of being itself. We are that non-conscious way of thinking, but we don't even realize it because it's gone completely effortless at that point in time. And once it's gone effortless, this gets hardwired into our brain. And these 4 steps are critically important. Repeated conscious thoughts, leading to non-conscious automatic ways of thinking, which become, and these habits then get hardwired into our brain. Of habit we were talking about, the first part is we acquire it slowly because it is coming from the conscious part of our brain, which is the slower part of our brain. The slower part of it, it gets acquired slowly. I have a few chats. I hope one of them is not that I can't hear you well. Hang on. Okay. Is the gratification same for physical and mental habits? Yes, to a large extent. I will request Usha Aunty to come on that, Vidya, if you don't mind. Right at the end, she can add in terms of is the gratification same for physical as well as mental habits? They're very, very similar, mental habits as well as physical habits. So the first part is acquiring the habit, which it gets acquired slowly. Then when it becomes non-conscious is when it gains its strength, okay, where it gains its power. And once it has gained power and it has become non-conscious, then it's very, very effortless from that point onwards, and it gets completely hard-coded in our brain. There are many, many quotes on habits. The one which has stuck with me for many years is something which Warren Buffett had said, which is chains of habits are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. Okay. I'm sure many of us would have gone through it. If you had smoked, you had the first cigarette, and after that, the second one, and after that, we say it is only a social, or drinking, or eating, overeating, undereating, exercising, being a couch potato, all of these things, chains of habits are such that they're very, very light when they start, and they get acquired very slowly. They slowly gain power, become effortless, and become hard-coded so that it becomes exceptionally heavy to be broken after a certain point in time when it has gained the full power. That's the power of a habit. Let's take one step back and review some of the things we have spoken about the brain and mind. As we know, this part of the brain and the mind, the higher center, is something only we have. Some of the animals have it, particularly our close cousins, chimpanzee have it, but only a sliver of it. And we are the only ones who have this higher center, which is also called the willful mind. Okay? The willful mind, the effortful mind, this is the seat for planning. This is the seat for communication. This is the seat for empathy. This is the seat of compassion, love, and so on. Then, very important part of the brain is the lower center. But the only problem with that is it is habitual. So in our lower center, if we habitually think in a certain way, then we have no way of correcting it directly unless we are able to metacognize it, which means we are able to become aware that we are going through that particular thought. Okay, that awareness has to come from the higher center, and then the higher center actively corrects it, and repetitively it does the same thing, and then it gets pushed back into the lower center where it becomes your second nature and a new habit is formed. How does it really happen? The first thing to understand is in the higher center, for every neuron, these are not precise numbers, every neuron is connected to something like 10,000 neurons. Okay, that's a lot of wiring, every neuron connected to 10,000 neurons, but it's only 10,000 neurons. Whereas the lower center, which is the more effortless part of it, the more efficient part of our brain, the connections could be anywhere from 40 to 100,000 neurons, right, in the lower center. So because that's a far more, from a biological evolutionary point of view, the lower center is something which we share with other mammals, with reptiles and so on. So we share that part of the brain with a lot of other animals in the animal kingdom, whereas the newer part of it, the connections are far and few at 1:10,000, whereas in the lower center, it is 1:40 to 100,000 neuron connections. Now, when we talk about these connections, what do these connections really mean? Okay. These connections, what they really mean is we have to go to an important law, which is called the Hebbian law. The Hebbian law states that the neurons which fire together, wire together. So the neurons get connected, they get wired together, creating neural pathways, and the neurons which are firing together will create pathways. It's like, if you may, every little neuron, if you think of it like a brick, the neurons which are all laid together, the brick structure which is laid together creates the road, creates the neural pathway, creates that highway through which our new thoughts can easily flow. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Therefore, when we think, when we emote, or act in a certain way, these neural pathways get stronger and stronger and stronger, and they get reinforced and they become hardwired. That is what this hard wiring is all about. We have a certain type of thought. With that thought, there is another connecting thought. With that, there is another connecting thought. The process of association, we create more and more thoughts and stories and ideas, and then they become stronger and stronger and stronger neural pathways and neural networks. So on this firing together and wiring together, what things fire and wire together? First, it's our thoughts. As we create thoughts which are similar, which are almost the same as our previous thought, then they get wired together. So there is a thought wiring which is leading to the formation of that neural pathway. Now, as they get wired, these groups of habitual thoughts is what is called our attitude. So what is attitude is nothing but it is just our group of habitual thoughts. Whenever we see somebody and we say, oh man, this guy has landed up all over again, I really don't want to spend any time, that's an automatic thing which happens in us, and that is a habitual thought, and that shapes our attitude. And this attitude which we have over a period of time, we have a certain attitude towards somebody or something or some idea, some group, some person, any of those things, that attitude which we have over a period of time really shapes up our personality. So we have to go back and say, who are we? We are nothing but our thoughts. We are nothing but our thoughts. The way our thoughts flow, the way our thoughts get connected, the way our thoughts get grouped, and how we become habitual shapes our attitude. And this attitude over time defines our personality. And therefore, where is our personality? Where did it come from? Our entire personality, we can trace back to a few thoughts which we have had in the past or in ourselves. So this is the personality cycle. It all starts with thoughts, and then these thoughts get grouped, which will become thought patterns. And once these thoughts which are grouped will become a habit because they get hardwired into the lower center of our brain. And those things will shape our personality. And that's the cycle. So our entire cycle of who am I, what am I in terms of my personality is nothing but, my personality is nothing but how I view a certain situation. As we have spoken quite a bit in the perception session, where we are saying that there is a reality which is out there, but the reality I perceive is very different from the reality. The reality I perceive is sent through my filters where I have thought groups and thought patterns which are there, which have created my understanding of a certain situation. And that will shape my perception. That will shape my mindset. That will shape my biases, my associations, my impressions, and my reaction and responses to things which are happening there. And therefore, my personality really is about how I think every single thought, which is why they always say you have to be very, very careful as to what thought we are thinking. Aristotle had this to say: what we repeatedly do, excellence then is not a habit, is not an act, but a habit. But we could also say that we are what we repeatedly think. Excellence then is not an act, but a habitual way of thinking. If we have to pursue excellence, we necessarily have to come down to a thought level, come back and ask those honest questions about our thought, and then come back and answer in terms of, is this the kind of thought pattern I want to create? Is this the attitude I want to create? Because these attitudes eventually go on to shape my personality, and that's who I am, but I can really work on it if I'm able to work at a still thought level. So what are the types of habits? There are many, many, many habits. Where I started saying it is all woven in quite neatly, there are many, many, many different kinds of habits. It could be negative thoughts, what we call as automatic negative thoughts, because it is quite automatic. Or it could be wanting to having the same thought repeatedly, which is obsession, or doing the same action repeatedly, which is compulsion. If it becomes clinical, it is called OCD, but all of us have shades of obsessions and compulsions. When we judge and when we stereotype somebody without knowing anything about the person because they belong to a certain group or a denomination, we automatically get into snap judgments, and that's a habit. Stressing about our work about our children, about our health, about our parents, and getting through that. It's not the acute stress which we talked about, where some incident happens and we get an elevated level of stress and it comes off. That is the acute stress. But here we are talking about as a permanently elevated level of stress, which is called the chronic stress. And chronic stress is a habit. Laziness, procrastination, and there are plenty of them. Anger, jealousy, greed, our inability to get out of bed, our inability to exercise despite knowing it is good for our health, being chronically late on deadlines, undereating, overeating, unhealthy eating, substance abuse, getting addicted to gadgets. Every one of these things can be a habit. Which is why we said habit is not an independent topic in that sense. It's a woven topic to all that we have seen in the past. It's neatly interwoven into many of the things which we have seen in the past. Then the big question is, okay, I understand that these are all the habits. These are all the issues I might have. What do I do about it? What's the way out? The way out is actually quite straightforward. The way out is exactly the way in. How did we form the habit? How did we form the habit? We were able to do repeated conscious thoughts, actively think about it, and then it became non-conscious thinking. It became non-conscious being, which then went on to shape our personality, our attitudes and personality. It's exactly the same way we will be getting out of a habit, which is not a desirable habit according to us. So getting out of a habit is no different from getting into a habit. What are the 4 steps? Same. Repeated conscious thoughts. Where do we get our repeated conscious thoughts? Repeated conscious thoughts have to come from our higher center. It has to come from our willful mind. The part of the mind where we are actively able to think about saying that this is a habit I want to change, and that very fact that we are thinking about it and we are aware of that particular thinking, that awareness is residing in our higher center. And then when we consciously think about it, then it's slowly over a period of time. What is metacognition? We talked about in ants, we talked about metacognition. Metacognition is nothing but saying, okay, maybe I have an automatic negative thought, which is one of, let's say, always looking at a situation as black and white. Okay, so if you are saying something which is not in agreement with me, then you are either wrong or I don't accept. So it's those kinds of black and white sort of a thinking. Now that black and white thinking is an automatic negative thought. But if I'm able to catch it and realize maybe there are shades of gray in the way we can think about it, maybe there are different levels and grades in which I can think about it, then you have already deployed your willful mind. As we deploy and practice that more and more, slowly it becomes a non-conscious way of thinking, which is nothing but it is getting pushed into our habitual mind. The new habit is getting more and more into our habitual mind. And that will shape a new attitude, which means it will slowly shape a new me. So therefore, by going from actively thinking about that particular habit I want to get rid of, or I don't want that anymore, to actively think about it and get into that repeated conscious thoughts, I deploy my willful mind. There is no other way to break a habit. I have to deploy my willful mind. And then as I deploy it actively in an aware fashion repeatedly, then it will slowly become a habit. And once it becomes a habit, then that will create a new attitude and that will create a new personality, which in this case is a new person, which you kind of lose the earlier being you were and you become a new person as far as that particular habit is concerned. Now, what are the steps to a new habit formation? The first is to really be able to clearly state what is that I want to change. I have been getting up very late and not having enough time to exercise. That's fine. That is the what, and I say, this is what I want to change, and I describe that and put it down and say, this is the what, this is what I want to change. Now, this is the somewhat easy part, because a lot of us would have done it, particularly in the early part of every year. We all write our resolutions. We all buy ourselves a new diary, or somebody gives us a new diary, and we'll write down a resolution and say, this year I will do this, I'll do this and do this, and we will describe all the what. For some reason, as most of us will relate to, in about 20-25 days, by the end of January, we have forgotten about all the things which we have written there. Why is that so? The reason why we forget what we have written there, even though we are consciously, carefully thinking about what are the things we want to change, it's not that we don't have awareness to it, right? So it's not that we are thinking that this is probably okay as well. No, we know very clearly what is that I want to change. But the big problem is we are not able to answer the question as to why do I want to change? What is in it for me if I were to change? And it can't be just a touchy-feely, fuzzy thing of saying my life will improve. Okay, it has to be a far more precise thing, and answering the question in terms of why do I want to change? What is the problem it is creating for me? And to be able to visualize that new state in which I might be in, where I'm caught in this trap, and I'm able to answer the question why very clearly and say, this is something I want to get rid of, which is the what, and the reason I want to get rid of is because of this, this, and this, which is answering the why. If our why is not answered, what we do is we deploy our willpower to do certain things. For instance, dieting is a good example. Many of us might have a craving for something. It could be craving for sweet, it could be craving for a certain kind of food, it could be craving for a cigarette or alcohol or whatever it is. There's a certain kind of craving which we have. And then we say, okay, I will not do that. And that dieting, that withdrawal will happen for a few days before we revert back to where we were. Because what we were doing was we were deploying our willpower, and willpower is something where if you over deploy willpower, then it kind of snaps. Okay, it's like a muscle. You can train willpower, but at the same time, it's also like a muscle where if you stretch it too hard, it will snap. So willpower is required when you're forming a habit. To sustain a habit, you need to have a clear answer in terms of why do I want that? Otherwise, willpower, deploying more and more of that, you will snap and revert to a previous state. Okay, because it's a bit like, let's say I'm used to having alcohol, and then I say, oh, I've stopped having it now. And then I say, if only I could have one more glass, if only I could have it only with friends, if only I could do this and all of that, then I'm not answering the why very clearly at all. Okay, if I'm not answered the why and I keep saying it is the what and I don't want to do it, there'll be a time where I will snap, and then after that you're back to square number one, because we haven't answered the question why deeply. Third, develop a plan. Okay, the plan should have steps necessarily and say, this is what I will do in week 1, this is what I will do in week 2 and week 3 and so on, and stick to that plan. As much as possible, stick to it. Now, here are a few tips. That's a new habit, by the way, which is forming on the left side, that little green shoot. So here are a few tips. Okay. The first tip when you're forming a new habit is this. Keep your habit goals small, simple, and most importantly, measurable. Okay. Don't keep a goal, don't keep a new habit formation as saying, I want to be able to run 40 kilometers. It doesn't quite work like that because we don't know how to build a plan around it. So keep habit goals small, simple, and measurable. Measurability is very important. Can I measure in terms of, let's say I want to get rid of some trait, I want to reduce my level of anger. There is a way to measure it, right? We've spoken about it. How frequently am I getting angry as compared to in the past? How intense is my anger as compared to the past? how long am I taking to revert back to a cooler state as compared to the past? FIR. What is my frequency? What is my intensity? And what is my response time? And I can measure it very clearly if I'm able to write it down and be aware of that. The second thing is, don't be too critical and say, I'm not really getting it. Let's say we are learning a new music instrument and we say, I want to attend 3 classes, I want to form the new habit, I want to learn this music instrument. And then I listen to myself and I'm not happy about it. And I say, okay, I'm giving up on this. Remember always that quality will follow quantity, which is you just do the same thing repeatedly over and over and over and over again. Excellence, the quality will follow. Definitely it will follow. Quality will follow quantity. Just focus on quantity. Okay, like they say in sales, you keep 2 jars, 1 jar filled with 5 rupee coins, and then you make a sales call, and after you finish that, you take that 1 5 rupee and put it on the other side. Then next sales call, you take it in. You just have to measure yourself in terms of, have I filled the other jar with all the 5 rupee coins as it transferred from one cup to the other. It's about the quantity. It is about the repetition. It is about doing it over and over and over again. While forming a new habit, there will always be setbacks. There will always be slip-ups. Invariably, there will be a snap and we go back to square number 1. At that point in time, don't punish yourself, don't be too critical, and definitely don't stop doing it. You just say, okay, this is the very nature of... Can one of you go on mute? I don't know who. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So don't punish yourself and say, this is what I thought all along. I'm not good enough for that. Don't do that. You just say, with every habit, okay, just like we said, for success, failure is an integral part of success. It is a part of the growing process. And similarly, slipping up and falling behind is an integral part of forming a new habit. Don't punish yourself. The only thing you have to do is to get up and not give up. Writing down is quite useful. It is not mandatory, but it is quite useful when you are developing a new habit. If you can write down how is your progress, at least make a note of it in your phone or make a very strong note of it in your mind. Because remember, reflecting on your progress, thinking about your progress is a conscious thought. And in the 4-step process of breaking a habit or getting into a new habit, the first thing is repetitive conscious thoughts. Remember, those conscious thoughts are very important, and therefore it's a good idea to reflect on how we are progressing on the new habit. And finally, we have to cherish what we get in return. Okay? If you are giving up a habit of overeating, for instance, then the sense of lightness we see, the clear mind with which we are able to wake up, the physically fitter way in which we wake up, that is an incentive which we are getting. That is a good thing which is happening. And we have to cherish what is the change which is happening. As we go through the process of forming a habit, there are things which are happening which are positive, and then you slowly cherish that particular thing. But don't get into a false positive. A false positive is kidding ourselves and telling, no, it's all working fine and I'm forming the new habit. That's not what we are saying. But when it is truly happening, cherish what we are getting in return. Yeah. So that is as far as habits is concerned. I hope I haven't taken too long. 40 minutes. Okay, not too bad. So I will stop sharing. And Ushanti, you want to add anything to this?
Not right now. It was a very succinct and clear presentation, Ramesh. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What maybe we should actually think about, you have already said this. What I would like to say is, whenever we think about habits, we only think about at the action level. Just like Ramesh told earlier, he has focused a whole lot more on the habits at the thought level. We usually don't think about that. And whatever he has presented, I'm putting in a different way. So if we can start thinking about habits, not just at the action level, at the physical level, but at the thought level, then so many things will make sense. Just like the examples that he gave about ants. That's at the thought level. Stress, again, we might think of it as an action level, but at the stressful thought level, anxiety, anxious thoughts, repetitive thoughts, these are all habitual patterns. What I would like to add here, one more thing, is all of these are automatic. Habits means automatic. And what we are trying to train ourselves is to come out of that automatic mode, not with the habits that we really want them, not the good habits that we have trained ourselves and made them as habits. I'm not talking about that. Many of the things, our life runs on an autopilot mode. To come out of that autopilot mode and to be mindful, which is what we're going to be covering next session, this is actually a very good segue into the next session on mindfulness, Ramesh. So the way to come out of the unwanted habitual mode of thinking is to be truly deliberate, conscious, willful way, which is the mindful way. Just wanted to add this so that we will be able to appreciate. We have already heard a few times about that word mindfulness, and to come out of that habitual mode, autopilot mode, or the unwanted habits, which we don't even think of that as a habit. A reaction is a habit, is to be at the higher center level of the brain, activating the higher center of the brain, or using the willful, conscious, deliberate mind more and more. Anytime we want to come out of a habit, we need to think about that conscious mind. Anytime we want to start a new habit, again, deliberate mind, willful mind, and conscious mind. I think that's about it. I would like to. Oh, one more thing. Yeah. Well, about feelings. We are both thinking beings and also feeling beings. One really not quick way, an easier way to form habits or to break habits is to add a lot of feelings into that, whether positive feelings or negative feelings. To form a habit, let's take the example of forming habits. A positive way of forming habits is to really, that if that why is strong enough, then we would really want to form a new habit. Love for that habit will really help, that feeling. And then the negative feeling about that is fear. I don't want to have this kind of a habit because this is going to cause a lot more either health-wise or mentally or physically. It will cause a lot more trouble for me, because both fear and love for what we do, they are very good motivators. So if we can bring feelings whenever we want to either form a habit or break a habit, because if you remember that slide that Ramesh showed with the connections, each neuron, there is a possibility that not that each neuron is connected with 10,000 or 100,000 other neurons, but there is a possibility of such strong connections. So whenever we feel the lower center at the lower center of the brain, it has so much more connections. That is where it becomes very powerful, even while forming the habit. Just for us to keep in mind. And also law of association, Ramesh mentioned that again, wherein we can use more real estate of the brain, be creative, think about it, visualize and associate any habit with either a song or a movie clipping, either auditory stimulus or visual stimulus, wherein by law of association, it has a lot more power. That is where that Hebbian law also come into the picture. The neurons that fire together, wire together, wherein law of association is going to be really powerful to either make or break a habit.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks a lot. So Aditi was asking